Okay, let's get this event started. I'd like to introduce our moderator, Ms. Marcy Leamy, Program Manager with Underwriters Lab. So if you'll come on up, give Marcy a
Okay, great. Well, we don't need audiovisual because I think these ladies speak for themselves. So I think you'll be suitably impressed without having to have any slides. My name is Marcy Leamy. I am a Technical Program Manager at Underwriters Laboratory, which is UL. You probably know UL because you've seen it on your refrigerator, on your computer. It says certified. But we do a lot of other things there. We certify all those credit card terminals that you put your credit cards in. Every credit card terminal has to be certified for security, and that's what I do. I work in the Information Management Security group. But previous to that, I was the Senior Director here at Your Here Labs, and I managed all the AR, VR, XR, immersive experiences projects. So that is why I'm here. Oh, sorry. That is why I'm here. It's great to be back. This is a beautiful space. I think you all are going to enjoy all the demos and everything afterwards. So please, after the discussion, make sure you get up to the second and third floors. I know the people working the demos will be bored if you don't go. So please do go up. Okay. So I will ask each one of my panelists to come up. All right. So I'm going to ask everyone, I introduced myself. I'm going to ask everyone here to introduce themselves and just tell who you are and where you work.
My name is Marie Graham. I'm the director of a VR and AR lab at the Mount Vernon School in Sandy Springs, Georgia.
My name is Sara Jimenez. I work for PTC, which is a leading company for virtual reality, industrial enterprise. They do business strategy for them.
I'm Janie Zecker, and I am the Chief Experience Officer at Nomad Candy, and we do mixed reality experiences and mobile applications. And I also am a part owner in Ag Voice, an agriculture voice-to-text startup. Hi, I am Tara Williams. I am the CEO of Wanderlust Business Solutions, which provides companies with assistance in figuring out how to utilize technology, including AR and VR, to advance their business goals. And I am also co-founder of Foresight Augmented Reality, who uses augmented reality specifically to help the blind and visually impaired by producing voiceover for the environment around somebody who is visually impaired so that they can better understand the environment they're in, navigate, and take advantage of that space.
Okay, to begin, I want to make sure that the whole audience is on the same background knowledge of what AR, VR, mixed reality, XR is. I know some of you know, some of you don't. So I'm going to ask my panel, I'm going to ask Marie especially, to just kind of talk about, if you want to give a brief overview of the differences.
So virtual reality is usually using a headset, and it transports you to a completely different place. It is a completely simulated environment, and it has a way of removing and immersing a person completely in an environment. Augmented reality is to take your current reality and to put an interface of digital content on top of it. If you ever played with Snapchat, definitely played with AR. I thought maybe you might want to speak to mixed reality, since that's what your company does.
So mixed reality is a combination of all these different technologies coming together to create an experience, right? So that could be you're talking to devices, you've got Bluetooth connected things, and you've got perhaps an AR experience on top of all that. So it's how all these things play together.
Okay. Tara, Zara, do you have anything you want to add? No? Okay. So one thing I would like to add about mixed reality is mixed reality allows you to work within your environment. It makes digital objects in your environment trackable. They respond to you. And there's different ways you do that. We have hand gestures, with the Microsoft HoloLens, where you do that little alligator thing. You have eye gestures, where they'll actually do heat tracking. They'll look at where your eyes are looking, and that is a way to interact. There's voice interactions. You can tell the headset to do things. It's to move things, to pick up things. So when we're looking at mixed reality, we're looking at actually interacting with your environment and using spatial computing so your environment is able to actually understand what you're doing. There's also a concept of XR, which is basically all of these things together. And it's like the new buzzword. So if you can say, I know XR, because this is the new buzzword. People will talk about it like it's really super, something really cool. But all it is virtual reality, augmented reality, and mixed reality together. They call it XR. Another thing I just wanted to mention, I don't know who's done the demos, but if you go upstairs, you'll see some different headsets. A virtual reality headset, for example, like your Oculus Rift, you're going to put it on. You won't see anything. All you'll see is your virtual environment. It's kind of, if you've never done it, you should try it. It takes a while for your brain to adapt to having a completely different environment. They say 10 to 15 seconds on that. AR, Google Glass. Everybody's heard of Google Glass, kind of a failure. And then when you're talking about mixed reality, you're talking about like the HoloLens. So you've got these clunky thing on your head, you're able to see things, and you're able to reach out and grab them, manipulate them, and have them react to you. So I think that's a good basis to start with on that. And during the question and answer, if anybody has any other questions, we can address those. Okay, the next question is, I wanted each of the panelists to kind of talk about how they got started in AR, VR. I'd like to start with Jamie.
So I went to a startup weekend about 12 years ago when I first moved to Atlanta, and I pitched my product idea, and I got the one mobile developer on my team. And right in the beginning of doing, when I left there, I thought, why don't everybody wanted that guy? Why don't I be that guy? So I taught myself mobile app development, and then right at the get-go, I started playing with AR. Back in the day when you can just actually like point your phone at something and see the outline of your computer. That was what AR was about 12 years ago. So we were playing with that back in the day, and then I went on to develop apps for the power industry that actually used augmented reality to fix power plants and just make that space much more modern than it's been.
Okay, Zara?
Sure, so maybe I started about 2.5 years ago. I came to the US and I was doing a master's, and during my last semester of the master's, I started working with this company called PTC, who had a project in IoT, Internet of Things, and AR. And the project was about how do you build an economic platform around IoT and AR. So I worked on this project for 6 months, and then I joined the company. And when I started in the company, I started more with IoT and kind of creating business strategies for IoT. And then about 6 months after, I started to get more and more into augmented reality. And then I completely switched to just creating business strategies for augmented reality in the industrial space, and started to do more and more research about how augmented reality has a huge impact on worker productivity and worker efficiency in manufacturing and service companies.
I have had a very crazy career. I was a nurse practitioner, a nurse midwife. I delivered like 1,000 babies. And then I went and taught at Emory for a while, and then ended up teaching in a high school, which I absolutely love. It was mid-October, and we were talking about refugees, specifically Syria. And I had told the kids that 500,000 people had been displaced, and half of those were children. And what I noticed was the kids are amazing, they're wonderful, but they just were not exposed, to the needs of refugees and immigrants, and I felt like I was failing them because I couldn't quite get to them. And the New York Times had sent out all of these Google Cardboard headsets, and that night I went home and I put it on my face and listened, and I was like blown away. I was standing in the rubble, where a refugee's kid's family the whole house had been just obliterated. And I was on a boat with a child in Uganda, and I went to school the next day, and I was like, oh my God, this is it. And I had a Google headset on every child's desk, and as soon as they came in, I said, take out your phones, and immediately they were like, really? And I said, I went to put this in, had headphones, and that moment, it's not very often in your life you can look back and say, like, that's the pivotal moment, but this was the pivotal moment for me. I saw the power in immersive technology. The kids took them off their faces, they were silent. A 13-year-old boy in the back of the room was crying. A little boy on the other side of the room looked at me and goes, oh, well, they're kind of like us. And at that moment, I realized that this was something that I really wanted to do. How do we harness that? And then I just said, we have to get headsets, we have to get computers. We're a school of design thinking, and so we don't want to just consume, we want to produce. And I just said, we can do it. And we got a sponsorship through Alienware and HTC Vive and Oculus through some LinkedIn philandering on my part. And then we just started actually producing content. So that's great.
So I've been in the technology industry here in Atlanta for over 20 years. Spent most of my career in the corporate world, but dealing with finance and government systems. And then I got to a point where I wanted to do something to really make an impact on people. And I have a good friend who ended up becoming a business partner who is legally blind. He found out in college that he had RP, which is a degenerative eye disease. And so him and I and another friend started talking, and we're looking at, with all of the emerging technology coming out, there had to be a way for us to make his life easier and provide better solutions. And so we started going down the path looking at augmented reality, specifically taking into account the voice enhancement and utilizing speech and audio descriptions of environments in order to be able to help somebody who has lost their sight to navigate around, but not just use navigation, to really understand an environment better. And so we ended up developing technology to, based on where somebody is at, to give them descriptions and have that extra layer on top of their environment so that they could get the most out of the places they are and be able to interpret all the things that we see. And so we were able to build upon that, and as the technology is growing, there's so much more that we can continue to do to make things easier for people who have physical or emotional limitations, and we can utilize these emerging technologies for that. And then I've got to learn a lot more in the AR and VR space since then.
Okay. Just to give you a little background, I have been in IT, I'm not going to tell you how long, it's been a while. My first job after I got my MBA is with a company called Accenture, used to be called Anderson Consulting, and I was in their high-tech industry group, which meant I worked on Iridium satellite phones, dial-up internet, MCI dial-up internet, which is now bankrupt, but I had nothing to do with that. Motorola had come out with this cool cell phone that nobody really wanted, worked on that. Kind of been in the IT industry my whole life, worked in website development, website design, and I was lucky enough to come to IFThen, which is part of Cooper Holdings, and do website development, is where I met John Bazell, who started off with the UR Here Lab, and he said, you've got the experience, come work with me, and that's where I did that for 6 years. And now I'm doing information security because I wanted to learn a little bit more about securing all this technology and what we're doing and making sure we're all safe. So that's how I got started here. Okay. I just wanted to ask everyone how you use AR and VR in your current organizations. Why don't I start with Zara?
Sure. So PTC creates software, and we have different types of software for different types of customers who wants to create different things. So, it goes to the entire realm of what you can do with augmented reality. You can do an ad, right? You can make something, a game, be more appealing, creating an app with augmented reality. You can do some demo of a car and then make it more easy to sell because you can see all the features and change the colors in augmented reality. But what we really focus on is in the industrial space and how you can use augmented reality to make a worker, a technician, a operator really more efficient using step-by-step instructions in augmented reality. And not a lot of people know this, but the manufacturing industry is very outdated, and there's not a lot of technology that goes in there. And most of these people are using, printed manuals when they're trying to fix a very complicated machine. So what we try to do is to help these people on their day-to-day jobs to use something that they can easily visually see in front of them, right? With a headset where they can have their hands free and actually on the job or either training for that job, see the instructions overlaid with the reality. And when this happens, it creates a huge impact on what they do on their day-to-day because instead of having a 5-day training, they can just have a 1-day training where the information is, retained a lot more than if it was, you were seeing a PowerPoint or something like that. Or you now, instead of taking 3 hours fixing this machine, then you're going to take 30 minutes because you're seeing kind of the instructions in an easier way. Or maybe you're not the expert and you actually can call an expert with a remote assistant solution that will tell you, well, I can actually indicate you the instructions through the screen in augmented reality and help you accomplish your job and even avoid an accident, avoid mistakes, avoid scrap that goes on their daily jobs in a really significant way.
Perfect, thank you.
So I've developed a lot of applications for the consumer industry. So for Timberland Solutions, we developed an AR solution where you actually, one of the challenges Timberland has was actually to upsell you on other items as you come to the store. A lot of people come in and they want to buy their boots, right? But they don't realize what else should I buy in the store that would go with this. So we developed a solution where you would actually tether, there would be devices tethered in the store because it's very difficult to get people to download your applications. And then when you had a tag, we'd have feature items that when you pointed your phone at the tag, it would actually show you other items that matched with those shoes. So you'd put a whole outfit together for the person and then they could go ahead and post it to social media. So that's one example of an AR consumer application. And then also we developed a virtual reality tour of the Carlos Museum at Emory. And for that, what we did was we first took you on an actual 360 tour with a tour guide, and you got around to the actual museum. But then what we realized with museums is that 90% of a museum collection is actually in storage. So we thought, wouldn't it be really cool to develop a template for an actual virtual museum, right? And so because it's not a real museum, we could show all those objects that are ordinarily not on display to people all the time, and they could change, right? So it was a room like this that was like 360, and as you pan around the room after a few moments, the paintings would actually change as to what was asked. Because we thought to think, wow, would that be great to use for all museums? Because that is a global problem, right? That we don't get to see a lot of the art that's available.
So with a foresight augmented reality, we specifically were using augmented reality to allow somebody to use a smartphone app in combination with a Bluetooth headset so that they could go through a space and be able to visualize through voice descriptions what was around them. And so someone could, once they got near a space, they would be able to describe anything from, it's interesting you mentioned the art museums, going through, if you go through the city of Decatur, they have a lot of historical plaques and information, have that information provided to you, to have the rotating artwork they have in the visitor center described so that you can visualize it. We utilized for some outdoor art displays, full descriptions. And so you can get a lot more around products and services as well, but just being able to understand what's around you so that you can fully get that information and take that in. And then right now we're working with Wanderlust. We are going into businesses and helping them figure out for each of their different types of businesses, how can you apply this technology? And so we worked with manufacturing companies who were looking at during the sales process. They have a lot of very distinctive parts, a lot of options and components and how they might fit together. So utilizing AR and VR to virtually build what they want so they can determine the different pieces as opposed to just kind of having to try and understand how they may fit together, as well as going out to these large conferences where you may have something that weighs a literal ton that you're trying to display in that commercial space, and being able to replace that with virtual reality and AR components to help you to better understand that and not have to have the expense. And then, of course, through training as well as marketing applications.
There are really two parts of my job. One is curation for teachers. Just this week, I had a kid who was having trouble with calculus, and he used CalcuFlow to understand and visualize an abstract mathematical concept. I had a science teacher who was doing a bone lab and then a chemistry lab, which would have been far too dangerous to do at our school, but was completely, we were capable of doing that with VR. I have art students who this week created clothes from the 17th century on a mannequin and tilt brush, and some 5th graders who came from the lower school to get to visit the pyramids of Giza. The second part of my job, and probably the more important part of my job, is content creation. Since we're a school steeped in design thinking, we look out in the world and we say, this technology is fan-freaking-tastic. But here's the thing, technology with students and with children also has a tendency to become destructive. So I ask, as like a teacher and a VR director and a parent, how can we take this amazing technology and do good with it? So we say, how might we help the end-of-life patient in a hospice increase their quality of life using VR and AR? So that's a question that I posed to the kids just this Monday. And now we're already need finding and setting up. We have someone from a hospice coming next Tuesday, and we're going to actually get to interview patients and hopefully create content. My kids have created something for Children's Healthcare of Atlanta. It took us about 1.5 years, but we were able to create something for pediatric rehab patients in a real authentic design thinking way with a user-centered, human-centered design. It is crazy exciting what these kids can do, and this next generation is amazing, so I'm excited to work with them.
Mount Vernon. I mean, come on, this is impressive. You don't see this. I'm awed and amazed.
It's the kids, not me.
Just to quickly how we use it. So Underwriters Laboratory is a safety company. If you look at the batteries on your phone, they have the UL label. We also will look at safety of all these devices that you put on your faces, not only looking at to see if there's noxious fumes coming off of the equipment, making sure that they're not going to catch on fire on top of your head, or they're going to burn you. So we use it for that way. We also we have a division in UL that uses virtual and augmented reality, mixed reality for safety training. Obviously, if you're an electrician, it's a lot easier to go into VR and learn how to wire up something than to climb up on a pole, get electrocuted, and tumble down. So we also work with manufacturers for safety training. So we use it in the same way. I directly do not do that at this point, but it's UL as a company does work with all these devices and the safety training. Okay. The next thing I want to talk about is like the value proposition of AR and VR. I mean, it's cool. I mean, everybody agrees it's really cool. But why? Why use it? What is it? What benefits does it add to us in both the consumer realm and in the manufacturing realm and education? So if you could each just talk a little bit about the benefits, what you see as the benefits, And then after this, we'll talk about some of the hurdles, some of the things that we have to all be on the lookout for. So why don't we start with Tara?
So obviously, I think there's so many things that can be done in the space, and there's a huge value, especially around social good and what can be done to help people. And that's where my focus has been. But as a grant, you always have to talk about dollars and cents to businesses and how they're going to increase their revenues. And the ability to use augmented reality and virtual reality to be able to catch consumers at the point they're interested in you, whether that be from augmented reality marketing labels, or in the sales process to make the process easier for them, for they feel confident in purchasing your product, are just a couple of the ways I think you can get a lot of value.
Well, I think there's obviously very exciting educational components to it, and I think it's interesting that you talked about Certificator, because we had come up with a concept too where you could have kids get educational benefit out of how things work, so they could point their phones when they're out and about in the city and things, and actually get information on, how does a sewer work, how does this stoplight work, things like that, right? So there's obviously educational benefit. And then from a VR component, it's so meaningful. A lot of times people don't have an opportunity to go to other places. And so I think also to bring museums content outside to individuals, or any kind of experience that they couldn't get to experience because they're not in the same city or the same country even, I think can be very meaningful.
Well, actually, part of my job is to figure out the value of augmented reality for companies. And I actually spent this past year researching that. And when I say researching, I mean, going out there, talking to customers, talking to people that really have problems and want the solution. And we did a survey for over 500 companies in the manufacturing and service space to figure out what they care about, and then trying to map that out to how augmented reality makes an impact there. And what we discovered was that it actually maps out pretty nicely, that the things that they care about the most is where AR, and I talk about AR specifically because we don't do VR, we only do AR, but VR is similar. So the things that they care about the most is actually where AR makes the biggest impact. And for manufacturing, those are things like reducing on-schedule downtime. So when a machine goes down unexpectedly and they have to fix it as fast as possible. So how can we help do that with augmented reality? There are things like decreasing the training time that it takes to train a new employee, right? A new operator, a new technician. And for service, it's other things like increasing the first-time fix rate. I'm going out there fixing a machine. How can I make sure that it's fixed correctly the first time, so that the technician doesn't have to go back and fix it? Or how do I improve customer satisfaction? That's a big one, right? So as a service company, all we care about is that our customers are satisfied with us and are going to come back. So how do we use augmented reality to fix some of those things and to make those things more efficiently?
I think that the value is that this type of technology is incredibly unique. It's unique because it's immersive, and it is completely immersive, especially when we're talking about virtual reality. We know that students learn better when they're immersed in an environment. And then I would say the number one value proposition is that it is empathy. It is an empathy generator. I know Chris Mills said it's like an empathy machine. It allows people to understand the perspective of others, and I think there's a huge amount of value in that, particularly now in our current state.
Those are great. I agree with all of you. In the past, most people know AR, VR as games that kids are going to play. You're not interested. It's really hard for a certain generation to put the headset on. They don't like it. It messes their hair, like everything. But we're evolving from being a gaming technology to a training and education. And when you can gamify training and education. People learn faster, they learn better, the quality goes up, the time to train goes up, and companies are really finding that by using this technology, especially with the new generation that's coming up, I mean, these kids are used to playing games, but they're learning how to, they're training them. I mean, they use it even, in transit now to learn how to fix the tracks and to fix the trains. So for me, the value proposition really is return on investment, but it really has to do with education and training, and that's really where I see the biggest benefits. Okay. One thing I just wanted a stat I just thought I would share is that 1 billion people worldwide have headsets, both AR and VR. And in the U.S. alone, this is from the marketing report. This came out in March. In 2019, 42.9 million people in the U.S. used VR at least once a month, and 65.7 million people use AR at least once a month. So there's a lot of people using it, and there's still a lot of people that aren't. So I think we're coming of age here. Okay. Get rid of the microphone.
Should I sing?
All right. So I just wanted to talk about some of the hurdles and challenges of AR. We've heard about all the cool stuff it does and how fun it is and how useful it is, but there are challenges. And I think we all need to be aware as a society what the challenges are and what we need to do for these hurdles. So I'm gonna start with Marie, and if you just want to talk about some of these the challenges.
I would start off by saying this type of technology is experiential, and it grows by groundswell. So you can talk about VR all you want. And then you were saying to go upstairs and try everything. Unless you are immersed in it, unless you have to put it on someone's head. We were at Bullock Hall, which is a small museum where Teddy Roosevelt's mother, Mittie, was born. And we were trying to tell them, like, there's this beautiful renovated house from the 1800s. And they say, this is the piano where the women used to sit and have tea and play the piano. And this is the library where the men puffed on big cigars and argued and about politics. And it was interesting because it was so sterile. And the students immediately were like, Miss Graham, what if you were able to put on a headset and all of a sudden, one of the Roosevelts comes down the stairs? And what if the piano is being played? And I'm like, yes, yes, yes. So immediately we get in front of the director and we tell her about it. And she's just like, what? And we said, we're going to come back tomorrow. We came back the next day. And this woman is a brilliant historian, probably in her 70s. And we put it on her head. Of course, she was concerned about her hair at first, but we told her she looked beautiful. She put it on her face. And she was like, oh my God. I mean, she looked, it's almost sacred the first time someone uses VR and you watch their face and you watch the immersion. We couldn't get it off her head for the other people. She even later, we talked us into leaving it with her, and we're doing some design work for her, but it's experiential. You can't talk about it. You actually have to do it. The other thing is this technology is moving so fast. And so as someone who used to not be a technology person, when I said, we're going to create content, we're going to use Unity and Unreal Engine, and my husband and my boss and everyone was like, but Marie, do you know how to do it? And I was like, no, it's fine. We'll figure it out. And it is the kind of thing that you can't be scared of creating it. There are plenty of non-coding apps where you can get started, but you know what? You can create an amazing environment in Unity. It's a free account. You could have it by tonight, and you could create an environment in the next couple hours without even coding. So I'd say experience everything that you can, and then create, because this field is ready for everyone's ideas, and then ship it out fast. Like, don't pause, don't hesitate, just go for it.
So I think there's a lot of challenges for adoption. So right now, obviously, the industry is moving really fast, but it's still a pretty mature industry. So how do you get the market to adopt something like this, right? And some people are ahead of others. Some people are, their visions are like far ahead, and maybe they create all the content, but then they can't get the headset that work for something that they want to use. Maybe they want to get a headset on an operator that has to work 8 hours a day, but there's no headset that actually allows us to do something like that because the headset gets warm and it's annoying and it's not easy to work with. So I think the challenge right now is that the industry is very mature and it's not perfect. So it's very hard to get everyone to adopt the technology that's not perfect. Because it's not perfect, not everybody believes in it, and they might say, well, it's cool, I'm not actually sure of how much value it's going to give. So I think if we do what we're saying and actually create more content, and we keep working on this space, we build better headsets, we build better solutions, then the market is going to believe in it more and more, and it's actually going to become a mainstream technology.
So I think the biggest challenge as I think about it is the bridge between the technology and the present reality. And some of that's about communication and understanding, that people haven't experienced these things and they don't get what it will bring to them, and therefore they're just in the dark about it, right? It's like the door you don't see in the room. And then I think there's also the reality that we are not necessarily in a comfortable space when we transition in and out of these environments. So for one example, I was at a VR exhibit at the High Museum, and my friends had developed this game where you actually throw a ball into a canister, right? And that's how you got points, and it was for some big company. So I realized oh, can't I just roll the ball and I'll still get the points when it hits the trash can, right? Well, sure enough, I just do that, but then I topple over, right? And it's a room like this, it's extremely loud, and knock over their Vive, display, right? And so I think it's that kind of, where is this in-between space where we transition into these things and come out of them, and how do we make that a safe space, right? Because we're still really in both spaces, right? We're perceiving only one at a time, but we're existing in both these spaces. So I think all of that bridge needs to develop further.
Definitely agree with everything so far. But one of the other things, once we get even beyond the challenges of the technology itself and the adoption process, becomes some of the things we get into with legal and ethical challenges as we move forward and how we utilize this technology. And as with all technology, legislation comes well behind. Technology moves way faster than the government. But it does come about where people start to question how we're utilizing different things. One thing that is talked about a lot is using something like a Google Glass, where you're able, in combination with facial recognition, to come to an event like tonight and walk into a room and be able to have information about all of you. When you go out to meet somebody, to get their name and anything publicly available online and that information. And so you start to get into the ethical concerns as well. So it's an interesting thing as we're developing and we're moving forward and everything's going so fast, to always take the time to be a conscious designer, thinking about who your users are, how you're using it, and keeping those privacy concerns as well in mind as we move forward.
Thank you. I should probably just walk over. So the other thing that I just wanted to bring up quickly is, there are safety issues. This is a really mature industry. We haven't done studies. We don't really know how having something on your face and images in front of your eyes affect you. We don't know how VR really affects the brains of children. And I've mentioned this at another event I was at. I have teenage kids, and when I used to work here, I used to sneak them in on the weekends, and we'd go up to the lab and play. And my 15-year-old would say to me, I like the cartoony environments much better than realistic. And I would say, why? He said, because it's easier for me to remember that I'm inside a headset. And that really, boom, it hit me, because I realized that we don't really know a lot about how our brains function. You've seen VR where people will go on a roller coaster ride and start screaming hysterically or start sweating. So we don't really know. So although it's so interesting, and I'm not saying I think it's amazing and we should all be experiencing, we should do everything with just a little caution And, you know, it's just like with the chocolate cake, everything in moderation. Don't be down in the basement, you know, on your VR headset for 26 hours straight. We don't know what it's going to do to you mentally. Alright, so Zara has to leave. She has a hard stop at 8. I want to ask one more question, and we have to make it really quick because we've got this Q&A. But I really wanted to know, from a woman's perspective, what do you think, how do you think the AR/VR industry could change to better benefit a more diverse population? You can answer it if you feel you want to. Does anybody want to have an opinion?
I was actually talking to them about this in the other room. It's interesting because my group of like the VR people are like the VR boys. And listen, I love my VR boys. They're like my people at the school. But I also really want to have some females, a little bit more diverse population. So I want them to stay where they are. I don't want them to go anywhere. But then I watch, and what happens is the females walk in and they see it and they turn and they leave. And I chase them down the hall, which I've scared a couple of the smaller ones. But like, come in, and then put this on their head, and then occasionally, you know, they're all like mind blown, and then they all take it off, and I go, you can do this, you can create this, and there's so much excitement. But it's definitely a field where you, especially at their younger age, in the kind of teenage years, where I'm trying to like, this industry increased with their jobs by 800% in 2017, something I throw out there at them. But I do think that, you know, just pulling people in and letting them try things is the best.
No? Amy, anything?
I think I've been pretty lucky so far because the space that I've been in has been very inclusive and diverse. I do feel like women sometimes are challenged by technology, and I appreciate you doing that to those girls because we need them. I think actually when there's a diverse room, and I don't mean all women, I mean actually diverse men and women, then we have better solutions. So that's more that we can help in that space, the better.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I think, you know, I started out in technology where in my class there were 3 women in a class of about 150 students, and the rest were men. And that's kind of how a lot of my career has gone. And you go out and you talk to women today, and there's still a lot of the lack of understanding of what some of these technologies are. And I think getting it in front of people and making it more commonplace is a really big piece. And every time we talk about really diversity and inclusion, I always want to also stress making sure you're not just including people that we definitely are getting more women in and getting people from different backgrounds, but we're also getting people who have disabilities into that discussion as well, because the perspective when you're looking at some of these new technologies and how people will use them, if they have different learning abilities, different cognitive abilities, and different physical abilities, that also plays a lot into kind of how we build out the space.
So it's such a good reminder.
Okay.
Well, we also have a social component too, I think, which I think you notice that it's really there's a lot of idiosyncrasy and irony in the reality that a lot of women will say, oh, I want my daughter to be in STEM, but then if you tell that woman you work in technology, her face just is like, what? You know, you're not an interior decorator. You know, so I think that we really need to cross that chasm as well to get our industry where we all have a space in it. That's kind of the goal.
I was going to say too, I did take it to Skank. That's the name of the school for dyslexics. That's right, the name is Skank. But anyway, I took it there, and I thought I had this idea: could you use tilt brush to make the letters, the physicality of the letters better? And it was amazing. So we worked with that group.
Okay. Well, thank you. I really appreciate it. And we could talk for more hours. I have a lot of changes. If there's any hardware manufacturers out there, come talk to me. 5-foot woman. I got some ideas about how to make your product more comfortable. But I do want to start with some of the Q&A. And Zara, if you need to leave, we will not be offended if you just pop up and walk out.
Can you give me a time check?
So it's 5 till 8.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Okay.
you're gonna
All right. Okay. I need your.
8724.
All right, everybody. Okay, we're not. I don't know how secure that is. You don't have the fingerprint scanner. Okay. So I've got some questions I thought were interesting from the audience. We got to keep the answers down to like two minutes a person so we can get through some. The first one is, what AR/VR technology do you like the most? And I think that could be technology or device. I think you should think about that because we're talked a lot about the platforms. We haven't talked a lot about the devices themselves that we put on our faces and our heads and our eyes.
Hey, Marcy, why don't you answer that one? You're the hard person.
You know, I prefer augmented reality over virtual reality because I'm a techie. I'm not very creative, so I don't like being immersed completely for long periods of time. I really like the I like the HoloLens. The only thing that, like I said, the only thing that I do not enjoy about all of these devices is that I find them heavy on my head, and they're sort of a one-size-fits-all. You stick them on, and then there's like a little wheel, and you tighten it until your temples are like throbbing, and then you're still kind of holding it up. So we have a long way to go as far as technology, as far as headsets go, and design and comfort. If you have big hair, if you have nice hair with its purple, if you wear glasses, problem.
Yeah.
You have to figure out, and a lot of times I'm doing the one eye thing, looking through the device. But HoloLens is still out of all of this my favorite. It's still, and it's cool. I mean, it makes me look really cool. Like,
Okay.
do anybody else wanna?
I would say if you are just starting off with VR and you just want a headset just to start off with, I think the Oculus Go is great. I take mine everywhere. I love it. But the minute I take it out, of course, everyone around me is like, what's that? What's that? And I pass it around. Also, I think Lenovo Mirage is good, and mostly for medical situations because it's completely, you can wipe the whole thing down, and they even remove the tag for you for healthcare. But I love them all. I want them all.
I am also a fan of the HoloLens, but the HoloLens 2 because, I mean, it's just major improvement, especially on heaviness and, how you put it on. So definitely waiting for that one.
Yeah.
I think more from the tech and development side, so I'm a fan of Unity and Lookatoo for developing the applications.
Yeah, I think I'm more on the augmented reality side versus the virtual. I like the building upon the environment that you're in. I think a lot more, but look forward to learning more and going more depth of the VR side.
Okay. So the next question is, what does the future of haptics in VR look like? So haptics, it's response, it's feeling what you're doing. It's gloves that make you feel like you're actually picking up boxes or widgets or whatever. There's suits where when you are in the military and you get shot at, you feel it. There's also, so haptics is feedback, body feedback. So where do you see the future with haptics? If you've had the experience, anybody have experience with haptics?
Yeah, so we had developed a concept solution for a surgeon who was going to do some surgical training using haptic gloves. And they're still, I would say, in a very, almost in the infancy of development, in that you don't have quite the tactical responsiveness that you need, right? It's still kind of minimal, but I'm certain over time that will become a richer experience.
We have a haptic vest and we're just starting to design for it. So I think any way you can increase immersion is amazing.
So tell us about the haptic vest. What does it do?
So the haptic vest, actually, we have a strap and a haptic vest, and basically it's just reacting to the vibrations of the sound. So as the sound grows, so does the vibration. And it's interesting because it's such a simple beginning. I wasn't sure how much it would increase the immersion, but actually it really does. So it's basically, it's just buzzing you, vibrating you as the sound grows louder. And it's pretty cool.
That is cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Time for
Yeah, real quick, if we can do a lightning round.
Okay, lightning
Let's do
round.
one.
Ready? What is the best AR VR example that you've seen? Go.
Tilt brush.
Tilt brush. Sure. Yeah, I don't know. There's so many good examples of things that are out there, and I love just even looking at simple marketing where you can go out to your shopping, you can put stuff in your own space. I love a lot of the current applications of AR, and I just kind of see where they're going from here. Like house. Yeah, house, IKEA.
That's pretty cool.
My favorite, all the try before you buy retail, because then my daughter can shop and I don't have to buy it for her, and she realizes it doesn't look good. So those are
That's a
mine.
good one.
Okay. Thank you very much. Do you want to?
Yes.
2 more slides?
I do.
Okay. Thank you.
I want to wrap up. Let's give them a nice applause for all the information they shared with us. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Barb, on your way back to Boston. She flew in just for this panel. So special thanks to her, even though she is outdoors. This time I want to just wrap up by saying we would love you to join the forum, and for $99 a year you can get into all of our events free, including the main forum as well as the Women Driving Innovation. We have a great wrap up at the end of the year. This is going to be a showcase event. It's at Atlanta Tech Village. We like to think of it as our gala event, but it certainly is going to be fun. We have a top innovator award that we are going to, the main forum has done this every month this year, and our group is just now getting on board with it, but we'll be doing it every single month next year. That we have a meeting, and at the end of the year, we pick the top innovators out of the whole year. And there's an award for top innovator, top diversity innovator, and People's Choice. So look for our emails and our social media so you can vote for the People's Choice Award. And please join us that would be November the 21st. And finally, but not least of whom I need to thank is the program chairs who put this great panel and program together. Please stand up and give a round of applause to Beverly McCall and Lisa and to Kat, Rutherford Kat, who helped us coordinate the location. Thank you so much. Good night, everybody.